Diane Wilkes. Welcome to Christiana's Psychic Cafe. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I am terrific, and I am thrilled to have you with us today. You and I go back many, many years, and of course our topic is real-time, in-person, live tarot events, and you and I met at two such events in the late 1990s, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that is right.
And of course, I think many people watching know who you are, but let's just do the full introduction. Diane Wilkes, you are the author of the Jane Austen Tarot and the Storyteller Tarot. You're the web mistress of Tarot Passages, and you are the organizer of the annual event, the Northeastern Tarot Conclave, and that's coming up in October, and we're going to be talking about that today.
Great.
But let's start with a trip down memory lane. Now, of course, you just got back from RS14, and we want to hear about that. But, you know, you have been in the tarot world for, if I'm reading your bio right now, for over 40 years. That's longer than I have.
Well, I've been reading since then. I don't think there really was a tarot world for a long time. There were just a lot of individuals until, you know, don't you think that we were all doing things, but we weren't connected? And I think that's what I was really grateful for the internet for, is it's very easy to find other people doing certain very popular things. But when we started, tarot was pretty sub rosa. And
it was.
And so to find other people out there, and, you know, I mean, I searched for community before there was the online world. In fact, I arranged my honeymoon to go to California to get a reading from Mary Greer. I'm not kidding.
And I've met your husband, and it doesn't even surprise me. I'm all good with that.
Really patient and loving and supportive. Yeah, I'm really blessed.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, is like going back to those early times. You know, I took my first tarot classes in a New Age bookstore in the 1980s and rented from that same store a VHS video. Well, that was, you know, at the time seemed like some old lady. It was probably someone our age. Really bad production quality, How to Read Tarot. And I watched that bad boy at least 10 times before I took it back. Right. And it was like, you know, drops of water in the desert.
Yes.
How was that for you? How do you perceive going from then till now? I didn't know this about you, but you've been to almost every sort of tarot conference, convention, symposia that there is. Give us a timeline.
Okay. Well, the first tarot, as I said, you know, I arranged my honeymoon to be able to meet Mary, and that was because I was so impressed with Tarot for Yourself. And in Tarot for Yourself, she listed resources. One of them was Tarot Network News. Do you remember that?
I do not.
It was a tarot newsletter that came out of California, and it's killing me, but I don't remember the editor, Gary Ross. There we go. Okay. I'm not so senile. And I finally did get to meet him, and he's a great guy. But I remember subscribing to that, and that was one resource that I had. And then I found out about bats. But that was just really too hard for someone from the Pennsylvania area to get to easily.
Right.
So I remember finding an Omega manual.
Sure.
From, you know, New York.
Yeah.
And I saw Mary and Rachel were teaching a tarot class, and like a year or two after, I was married, I was like, I have to go to this. This is so exciting. Other people do tarot. I'm not the only one in the world. I mean, the way I learned was I found a psychic, and I asked her to teach me. And of course I used Mary's book, but the resources that are out there for people now, it wasn't like that when I started, for sure.
Right.
I'm a little envious, frankly.
Sure.
I mean, you know, somebody like Mary was this faraway goddess, and now you can have an email conversation with her You know what I mean? So easily.
She is so gracious, and not just Mary, but Rachel and all of our elders and our teachers. I would say the vast majority of them, you email them, they'll email you back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember when it was such a small community, and there's like sometimes some real backbiting and ugly stuff that I see now. Mm-hmm. It did not exist the first 5-6 years that I was in Thoreau.
Really? Okay.
Definitely. It didn't exist. And, it kind of came as a shock to me because I felt like when I went to my first major tarot conference, which was the first International Tarot Society conference in Chicago, and that was probably about 15 years ago, maybe a little more. I had just lost my job. I had gone out on disability, and I had like no money, and I had fortunately sent away for, to enroll in this before I lost my job. So it was just airfare. And I remember thinking, this is something it had every stellar name that I, admired in the tarot world, including Eden Gray, who was a special guest.
Yes.
And, I remember just meeting so many great people, and there was no, snobbishness, no cliques. Everyone was just so open and excited. And I remember at that time I wrote about it and I was like, I found my tribe. I felt like the ugly duckling who discovered the swans.
I think I know that feeling, and I think I felt much the same way at my first event, which was where I met you at the in Albany at the ATA convention. And I remember just one moment looking around the room at all of the people there and thinking, oh my gosh, these people are like me.
Yes.
And, I was, how old was I at the time? Maybe in my mid-30s, and had never felt that before.
It's an amazing thing because you just don't meet them every day. I was so desperate for someone to talk tarot to. I kept trying to teach people tarot so I would have that, but it wouldn't work because they weren't necessarily as committed to learning. Do you know what I mean? They just really wanted me to give them readings.
Right. So you went to this first event. Then what?
Well, I want to say one thing about that event because it really changed my life. I got to meet Arnell Ando, who had done the Transformational Tarot, which was a really important deck to my personal progress as a reader. And when I met her, I told her about this idea I had for the Storyteller Tarot, and she said, do you want me to do your deck? Do you want me to do the art?
Oh, yes. And that is an important point, I think.
Yes.
That when we and it happens online too, but I think when we gather together in person, the idea that we can find people with whom we can collaborate.
Yes.
That is
absolutely
a fabulous thing.
Well, and because I loved her deck so much, it was like, I would compare it to Monet coming down from the clouds and saying, would you like me to do your deck? It's just like, oh my God. So that was like a really pivotal thing, just meeting different people there and forming fast friendships, and allegiances and alliances, and not in a political way, but in a friend way, in a community way.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It meant the world. And it just really, Storyteller Tarot would not have been done without Arnell because I had done the rough draft for the book and I had given it to her and I said I would, revise it. And I didn't. And she just kept sending cards and I realized she is more serious about this than me and I could never disappoint someone else. So that got me into a motivated place that I really wouldn't have been in without her. So
that is so wonderful. And I'm thinking about this from my perspective because I had the flyer for that event. I did not go to that event, but I remember the flyer, a paper flyer came in the postal mail.
Yes.
Yeah, these are old concepts.
Yes.
And it was on my refrigerator and I would look at it and think, oh gosh, I would love to go there. But of course I had 2 young children. I was supporting my family as a tarot reader. I was not going to fly off to do
Right.
that. It just wasn't going to happen at that point.
But wasn't it exciting just to hold it in your hand? Didn't it seem like a holy grail thing?
That it existed at all. And I remember, and I spoke with James Rickliffe about this a few months ago, the original ATA newsletter.
Yes.
That was a bunch of mimeographed paper stapled together, put in an envelope, and again sent through the postal mail. Oh my gosh, manna from heaven.
Absolutely. Well, that's how I felt about Tarot Network News. And I saved them all because they were just filled with really great articles. Gail Fairfield had written some things and, you know, just different people. And you learned so many techniques in those days in this way as opposed to online where there's almost a superfluity of resources that could blind you and make you not necessarily take them to heart.
Well, it's true. It's like we have an opposite problem now. We have to weed through a lot.
Absolutely. But getting back to your topic, we do not have a huge amount of tarot conferences. We certainly have more than we did back in our day, our early days, but it's not like every weekend we have an opportunity.
No, we don't. Now, of course, one of the great opportunities that's grown up over the past decade is Reader Studio.
Yes.
And you just got back. How was RS14 for you?
It was very interesting. And again, because we've been, like, I went to a very, early RS Reader Studios. I think I've been to 3 or 4 of them now. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, it was really geared for professional readers only. Mm-hmm. And it's gotten bigger and bigger, and the group is much more diverse. You have beginners in there who literally, at my table, there were 2 people. One had just gotten his first tarot deck.
Wow.
Right. And at the same time, you have people like me and Mary and, a ton of professionals, Donna Lay, Ronna George. I mean, I could just go on and on and on and on. And they're just the first to come to mind. And James Wells, now more people are coming into mind, But the point is, we're talking about a tarot brain trust, like if there were such a tarot White House, we'd all be in the basement being hidden and Dick Cheney would be flying around, what I mean?
Oh my gosh.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's so many there. Kathleen Matthews was there, Rachel was there. I mean, Mary, of course, and you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it was a very diverse group, and it's a very large group. So, I really enjoyed Mary's presentation, which was very academic and scholarly. And it was really a lot about intuition and what the most cutting edge science is on intuition. And of course, there are people who really they prefer myth to science.
Right.
We see this in the evangelical community. And guess what? We see it in the tarot community too.
Right.
And so there's that group of people who might not have been so happy, though I didn't really hear too many people exhibiting displeasure. And then there's the group of people who really couldn't have understood any of it. The guy who just got his first tarot deck, I mean, it was like, he was like in Soup World, I mean, he had no idea. So, for me, that was like delightful. For someone else, I don't know, for someone who's new to tarot and doesn't know that there's a minor and major arcana, I just don't think they're going to really get more subtle nuances.
Right.
Unless they're academically sharp, and not everyone who was there is.
Right.
It's just reality. Right. My favorite presentation was Kathleen Matthews, but again, I felt that was really more geared for someone with tarot expertise. Right. So I ate it up with a spoon because it was something I didn't really ever know. And it's situational cards and the way you work with reverse cards and the way cards are looking at each other and closing the space. It was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it, and it was a technique that I will use again and again because I love learning new techniques.
Right.
But do I think it was appropriate for everybody in the group? No, I do not.
Gotcha.
And then the last one was on, it was really more basic, I think. And so again, it was really good for beginners, but it wasn't necessarily so great. So here's the thing with Reader Studio. There's not a lot of choices. You have one track.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You don't
Yes.
have, like at FATS, there are 4 classes each time around. So you have a lot of choices. I'm not saying one is better than the other because I'm not.
Right.
Because especially at the Chicago conferences, you want to cut your heart out having to choose which workshop to go to.
Right.
I mean, literally, it's painful.
Right.
So there, it's not like one is better or worse. It's just, it's something to consider if you have only a certain amount of money to spend on an event. Do you want, where are you? Are you a beginner? Are you, a kind of somewhat experienced, or are you a professional? And then you may indeed want to think about which event you want to go to based on that kind of information.
Sure. So tell me about the Northeastern Tarot Conclave.
It's a really, with Tarot Passages, that was my contribution to the tarot community. It was free, it was a resource and blah, 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 and I loved doing it, but it became overwhelming for me, with other things, with my health and so forth. And I always want to give to the tarot community because I love the tarot community. I wasn't using the term my tribe lightly.
Right.
I had never felt a sense of community until that. So that was very meaningful for me. The Northeastern Tarot Conclave really came about in my mind as something affordable. This was very important to me because some events, the one thing that's really great about, and I know we're going to talk about that, or maybe we aren't, but I will just mention, is tarot meetups. And yes. They're great because they're local and they're inexpensive, free in many cases, and that's a wonderful resource for everyone, young and old, rich, poor, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
That's great.
Local tarot meetups, you can often find them on meetup.com.
Yes.
And these are opportunities to be in the same room with other tarotists, these sort of opportunities that you and I did not have so much 20, 30 years ago.
Exactly. And would have been like a dream for us.
Right.
You wouldn't have to go teaching somebody who didn't want to learn tarot in order to have someone to discuss it with. And the other thing that I want to say is it's wonderful that the internet offers so many different kinds of forums and interchanges and because it is a way to interact with people. But I think one of the problems with the things I've seen in the tarot community where people aren't necessarily very courteous to one another, I think it's because of the difficulty in communicating clearly without anything but words on the internet. When you meet people in person, you're not going to say the terrible things that some people say from their keyboard.
And I know that to be true, although I have to say that I have, and this is probably part of like how tarot healed me, that's like a whole other show we'll have to do sometimes.
And please include me because I could tell a book on that one.
But as I said, one of the first moments I ever had in my life of feeling like I belonged was with tarot. But then, later on I joined the drumming community and a number of other communities.
Right.
And I have to say, I have seen the kindergartners in the sandbox in every community in which I've been a part. So I think there is something, and my dad was a Methodist minister. I grew up in the very socially conscious United Methodist Church,
right,
Northeast, and even there, There was, I just think there is something about us. We long to be with one another, and then when we're with one another, we treat each other like shit. I don't know what's up with that, but there it is.
I swear to God, I'm not making it up. The first tarot conference in Chicago, and I think even the second, was completely free of that. Or maybe it was just my experience. But
and it's hard to know. If it is just your experience, maybe since it was the first and everyone's coming together,
right.
that first meeting when everyone gets off their various boats from their various desert islands.
Yes.
It's a special, unique energy,
Yes. And then when you get to know each other, then you find out who irritates you. Right?
Maybe that's all it is.
I don't know. But that's not really, I guess, our subject. It just kind of made me think of those days because, I know all old people say, oh, the good old days, but there really was a difference. And, I would like to see us return to that. So that gets back to my Northeastern Tarot Conclave because I wanted something very affordable. I wanted something local in this area, where I live. New York is very convenient for me and many people, but the finances for Reader Studio don't make it as easy. See, my plan was to really do a local event.
Right.
However, I'm so insane that I am. Because I always want something to be like the best if I do it. Right. And so I got in really great presenters, nationally known presenters. So it became something last year where people were coming in from Canada and California and and that was not my plan.
So now I have to ask logistics.
Okay.
Okay.
So cute.
October 25th and 26th this year.
Yes.
In Fort Washington, PA.
Yes.
Is it in a hotel, school, a conference center, a hotel?
It's in a hotel that is right off the turnpike, and you can get to by train. But like public train, not expensive trains, Perfect. Like local trains.
Right.
I mean, when I thought of I tried to think of everything to make this an easy thing for others. And I kind of overdid. I'm such a Jewish mom too, with no kids, but a cat. That I arranged for everybody's rides to different things. And I won't do that this year because it really did make me insane. But nobody on earth does that stuff.
Right.
But it was small enough that I could do it. And I wanted everyone to be happy.
Right.
And, the logistics are that the first day is a conference. I kind of tried to model it in some ways after BATS, except it's only one class, like Reader Studio.
Okay.
So if the class schedule does not sound good to you, this might not be the event for you.
Right.
But it's going to Paula, the subject of this one is going to be dream work.
Nice.
And the Thoreau.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of my fascinations. And I've been doing a lot of work on it for a ton of years. And Rachel Pollack is going to be presenting.
Wow.
When I say stellar, I mean stellar. A wonderful, brilliant woman named Ava Isantawa is going to be presenting.
Oh, yes, I know who she is. I didn't know how to pronounce her name, but I know exactly.
And I may have screwed up. It's Ava. I know that part is right. She's corrected me twice, so I know. But she's very gracious when she corrects me. And she's going to be presenting. And Paula, I can never pronounce her name, Scarmadilla Chaffee, who is very knowledgeable about dreams and has worked with Robert Moss and is just wonderful. She, and of course Thoreau, she's also going to be presenting. So these are three people I can't wait to hear. Normally I include myself in the teaching, but I just decided that I would rather have them do it.
And that is the mark of a true organizer. You know whatever it is that you do, you're really organizing when you're organizing and not doing it.
Yes, because I really love teaching.
Right.
But the second day, I'm going to be teaching with Rachel.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
wow.
So, and that's going to be a very small, intimate event only 20 people can come to that. And it's held at this like incredible house a friend of mine has that's just gorgeous, and the grounds are incredible. And, it's just, we do it, I think, from 10 to 2. And, it's just a really special opportunity for people to work in an intimate setting with Rachel.
So that's sort of it. It has like almost like a retreat feel to it.
It is very much like a retreat. And I didn't have that vision for it when I started, but it just kind of came together that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, we like go to this really wonderful place for dinner. All of us, all the teachers, presenters, and anybody who wants to come, to after the event. And what's really nice about that is like the food is really incredible, because Rachel looked at me, she's like, people will come back just for the food.
So, and because, this is brilliant. One of my thoughts, in terms of, I would love to help to put something like this together where I now live in Florida. And one of my thoughts is, oh my gosh, feeding people is like that's like not in my skill set.
Here, good news. Let me stop you, because people pay for their own meal.
Right.
I don't do that.
It's brilliant. And that way they can get what they like. All you have to do is find a nice place. It's fun.
Yes.
That's so smart. I love that.
And it's literally within walking distance of the hotel.
Oh.
I know. Sometimes when you're trying to do something good in the world, the universe really like embraces you and helps you. Yeah.
So, are there still openings? Can people still come?
Yes. In fact, I have not even put it online for people to buy, early registration, but I will be doing that in the next week. I didn't want to compete with the tarot school. I wanted to give them, some people, they're very competitive, and you wouldn't believe the stories I could tell you, but I'm not.
Oh no, I've been in this industry for a long time. I could match you story for story, but that's another show too.
Yeah, but my ethics would never allow me to I'm not competing with the tarot school from the very beginning. And I called Wald to let him know when I was going to do this, which of course I didn't have to do.
Right.
But why wouldn't I? Right. I respect him. He's my friend. Ruth Ann is my friend. I'm not trying to hurt anybody.
Right.
I'm not trying to compete.
And it sounds like, not only are you not trying to hurt anybody or compete, what you've created is a very different animal. And I think
completely
that's interesting too, because it used to be that, sort of the idea of a tarot conference, convention, symposia, it's just a thing, but really it's a collection of a lot of different things, each with their own flavor.
Exactly. Like, I love going to bats. The classes are only 40 minutes long, and sometimes there'll be, first of all, Phyllis is just so much fun. She's just great. And I've had some really amazing bats. I'm going to be presenting there this time around. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So
this is our opportunity to promote bats and to promote the Northeastern Tarot Conclave, and people can see you at both.
Yes. And there's also something called, I'm not just about promoting me. I'm really about giving information to people. Right. So there's also the Terosophy events. I know there's one in Texas, just a week or two before mine. What I want to say to people, because I know people from all over listen to your show, is look and see, there may be an event that is close to you. And that's the ideal situation, because if you can spend time with people who live fairly near you, when the event is over, it's not really over, because you can see them again. You can make friends. I've made so many friends over these years going to these events that I would never have made just online, because when you meet people, it's a totally different thing. And that's why I thought your subject was so interesting, because I really encourage people to take tarot classes so that they can meet other people, because online it's very nice, but then you don't have somebody you can practice with when the class is over.
Right. And just the fellowship.
Yes.
And I do experience nice moments of warm fellowship online, and I'm so
absolutely
grateful, for that every day.
Me too.
But there is something about being in person, and that's where the meetups are so important.
Yes.
The local classes. And all of that, as you say, if you meet tarot friends, it's just going to go from there. And, you know,
Absolutely.
if we think about from where we started way back in the day and those first events and, you know, long before there was anything that we called social media.
Right.
And where we are now, I can only imagine where we might be 5 years, 10 years from now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is and believe me, if it weren't for the internet, I wouldn't know half of my friends. You know what I'm saying? Because
totally.
That's how you connect and get to know people. But I do think as we become an increasingly computer reliant society, we forget how important it is to communicate with other people. And as tarot readers, that is the most essential thing we do.
Mary Ellen Collins, welcome back to Christiana's Psychic Cafe. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me back here.
Well, it is terrific. And we're here to talk about, you know, what I think is a really important topic. And when I was thinking about the topic and thinking about who I might ask to talk about it with, you were top on my list for a couple of reasons. First, because, of course, you were lucky enough to go again to Reader's Studio this year, so I wanted to hear a little bit about that. But also because as we discuss real life, real time tarot community, you've been involved in a number of things in South Florida and have participated in different kinds of events, as well as being involved in the larger national and international things. So I thought you might have a fun perspective. So first of all, how was RS14?
Well, every Reader's Studio I've gone to has been a good experience, each in their own way. They are kind of like tarot readings. There's no two alike, you know. However, there's certain things that we hope that we will find there each time, and I did indeed find certain things there. Some things had changed. I had been to Reader's Studio in 2009 and 2010, and then there was a gap, so hadn't been there for a while. And I gotta say that the initial visit that I went there, I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was thinking how it kind of reminds me of the first time you go to Disney, and the joy and the magic, the whole sheer fun for a tarot addict like I am to be surrounded by people who read tarot, all kinds of tarot cards to use that are for sale, and totally a tarot immersion experience. And I can't say enough good things about the whole experience of going to a tarot convention. If you haven't been to one, just find out one that's in, reasonable distance from you and go. Actually, I didn't start out, with the idea of going to Reader's Studio in mind. I had initially been interested in going to BATS, BATS, right? Bay Area Tarot Symposium. And that's put on by our irrepressible Thalassa. She's the Bat Queen and the head of the Daughters of Divination. And that's been going on for some time. I think she's been doing that since the early 90s.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That got on the radar with me because I was listening to a podcast several years ago from Lisa Ruffalo, and she was talking about that she had Thalassa on, and they were talking about their upcoming bets, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta go, maybe not this year. But the whole evolution of that was I mentioned that was going to be something that I was interested in doing, and I mentioned it to Ciro Marchetti because, as you know, I have the privilege and honor of living fairly near to him, and he had come to give our tarot group a vision of his upcoming Tarot of Dreams at the time. When I told him I was interested in bats, he said, oh, no, you've got to go to Reader's Studio.
And he said it just like that, too.
And I am so glad that he suggested that, because that was kind of a pivotal moment for me. I signed up for it. I got on to, they have a Ning that essentially, where you get to know people a little bit before you even go to the event. And I began to meet a lot of the other people in my local community, including Garnet and, lots of my other friends that were local tarot people. So they were there at my first reader's studio and the second one. And they weren't here at this one.
So let me interrupt you for a minute. So when you first went to Reader's Studio, you already knew tarot.
Yes.
And so you were already involved in a local tarot group, is that right?
No, actually not really. I was taking a class at the time. I guess you could call it a group. And I was, honing my tarot skills. And we found out that my favorite deck, which is the Gilded, that the artist was in the community. So we contacted him and he showed up at our group,
He's good that way. Taro's
Yes.
really great that way, for sure.
He really, that was a wonderful thing because essentially learning about, the creation of a deck from the person who actually created it. And we were there watching he created Tarot of Dreams and on into the Legacy and the Oracle and ultimately even a Lenormand, but that's a whole nother story and probably a subject for a whole nother Psychic Cafe, talking about the works of Ciro Marchetti.
It's a good idea.
It is. But anyway, that got me started. I really had New York is an easy shot from Florida where I live, so you can just go up there in a direct flight, and I signed up and it was amazing. First of all, one of the things that you're doing is you're rubbing elbows with all the people that you've read their books. You're sort of like, oh, there's Mary Greer. And you're taking classes from them, but you're even like at one point in time, we had a group exercise and for some reason there was, I got sort of lost my chair at the table I was at, or they told us to mix it up. So I ended up sitting at a table with Corinne Kenner and Barbara Moore. And they were Corinne was test driving the prototype for her Wizard's Tarot at the time. And our instructor was Robert Place, who did this 3-layer, 7 deep and 3 across soul spread that was just amazing, So these kind of experiences, they can't be had online. They can't, there's no replacing it, And that is, I think, one of the cool things about our world. Yes, there's a lot more of us now. I think about you. You started out, way back in the olden days. Essentially, you guys were like little, gypsy camps off in the wilderness. You might run into another tarot reader in your lifetime or maybe not, but the ability that we have now with the internet to connect not only with people who want readings, but other tarot readers, people who are more gifted on the teaching side, people who know other modalities, other divination aspects, people who, so I can chat a little bit with someone who knows astrology or, all these things that really enhance my art. So it's like a guild.
It really, I think it really is. And you're right. When I first came up in the tarot world, of course, even before Reader's Studio, in the very early days of the ATA, there were regional conventions. Mm-hmm. And so in the late 90s, I had my first experience, as you say, of being in an environment. At the time, it was Mary Greer, it was Rachel Pollack, it was the late Donald Michael Craig. And to be in that environment really, you're right, I think that's the first thing. That's not even about being starstruck, although I think there is some of that.
Absolutely.
But the ability to spend a weekend with these people, because, and correct me if you think this is not true, but one thing that I've found to be true in our field is that even the brightest stars have time to talk to new students. Don't you find that to be true?
Yes, you know, And it's not just during the class, but, you're there in the same hotel where the event takes place. Right. And so after hours, everyone's sitting around over cocktails and, schmoozing. And it's still pretty much pure tarot.
Yes. And that was actually always my favorite part. I've been to 2 of the old ATA conventions, and then I went to Watts in Wisconsin. And at each of these events, probably my very favorite parts were the after hours parts.
Yes.
When, you'd think after a whole day of teaching and taking tarot classes, we would want to put our decks away. But no, not at all.
No, not when you're in a room full with the tarot vibe just going doing.
So when we talk about, from your perspective, the reasons we do it, the reasons we go to a BATS or a tarot con or a reader's studio, part of it is to meet and learn from the people who have written the books.
Yes.
Another part of it is to be sort of submersed in this thing that we really love. Lots of other tarotists, lots of tarot decks, lots of other modalities that are complementary, to be submersed in that world.
Right.
Part of it is to learn new things, and you and I are both professionals, so it really is professional continuing education.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you, of the people, not the presenters, but the people who go to Reader's Studio, how would you divide that up between professionals, hobbyists, and those working toward being professional? Where does that break down, do you think?
Well, of course, I don't have any kind of hard figures on that, but just from general conversation, I think probably there's always a good number of people that, what you need to do in order to go to Reader Studios, you have to be able to read a 3-card spread without reference to a book. That's Wald and Ruth Ann's specification. And there are plenty of people who are just there at that point.
Okay.
At every one that I've been to. And they're the ones that have the best questions, the most fresh perspective. When we do the group readings, we're like, wow, They'll actually look at the Rider-Waite-Smith, with whom all the rest of us are so innately familiar, and they'll look at the Fool and go, wow, that looks like a good visual to tell me to wear a really colorful outfit tomorrow. And you'll be like, oh, it's great. Tarot just keeps surprising us, but there are lots of professionals there too. There's a lot of network going on, and a lot of the people there's a lot of people who they're the stars, like, that we think of, that have been doing it and with whose names we're familiar for 20, 30 years, that sort of thing. But people who have come recently on the scene and really helped to give things to the tarot community, they are there as well. So it's almost like, you're either a person who's kind of there to teach others, or you're kind of the new student. I think for a lot of us that are in between, and this is where we can, take a look at, maybe where tarot conventions can move, and I haven't been to all of them, only this one, but right. Some of the others may perhaps really do this. But I think it's a good idea to take a look at what the mid-level the person who's not, didn't just write a book and who's not teaching us something, but who didn't just start reading tarot. What can you, show me, that kind of thing.
Interesting. So you would like to see, like in Mary Ellen's Perfect Tarot Convention, you would like to see something, some way of having people who are tarot teachers in their community, who are well versed in professional tarot, but are not at the I've just written 3 books level. You'd like to have more for them to do, or more for them to teach, or what would your vision be there?
I think really I'd like to see going more in depth in the study of tarot. And, the presenters were excellent as always, and I always get a lot out of it. We learned some new spreads. We saw some things that, I guess for me, was already familiar with a lot of the stuff to some extent, which way are the tarot cards facing, that sort of thing. So, really getting deep into how the cards can relate to one another. What happens when you have a reading where you're just not reading someone? How do you deal with that? Just all kinds of things that a professional might need for their career.
Interesting. Okay. And so when we look at your experience with Reader Studio, since that's where your experience is, you went for a couple of years, didn't go for a few years, and now have gone back. How has Reader Studio grown and changed over the years?
Well, I'll tell you, it's I think it's about the same as it was in 2010. So that's a good thing sometimes, if a formula works, stick with it, and one of the things that really augments it are the classes that are presented in the evening. I didn't mention that earlier. But one thing that is done in Reader Studio is that it's I think it's 200 people who attend. It might be more than that. And everyone takes all 3 of the same classes throughout the entire weekend.
That's very unusual.
And it's true that there's something for everyone in that approach, but I have years of experience as a training facilitator. And I know that sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge when you're trying to present to the beginners and at the same time offer something a little deeper to people who are looking for something that pushes their envelope, so to speak.
Right.
For example, in the tarot classes that I do, I have a very clear intro class that everyone has to take, or I have to feel comfortable that you're really familiar at an intro level.
Right.
And then all the others are just a topic, like, this week we're going to study Pentacles, and this week we're going to study, there's a new spread I want to show you, that sort of thing. You don't necessarily have to take all the classes to be up and running.
Right.
But, I think probably what, might work a little bit better. And like I said, some of the other tarot conferences, I think BATS does this, and I don't know how TarotCon works out in Dallas. But, having, diverse curriculum where, these 50 people take this class, they're on this track. These 50 people take this class because, they're kind of more, into the, maybe they're not Rider-Waite Smith. Maybe they want to play around with Marseille style, that sort of thing.
And typically at other festivals and symposia and at the other tarot conventions I've presented at, that has been the case. Actually, no, that's not true. 2 of them I've presented at, there's been the choice, where you could, at 10 o'clock, you can take this class, or this class, you have to choose. And one of them, everyone attended the same classes.
Yeah.
And I will say I see the up and the down on both. As a teacher, it was challenging. The convention I did where we were all in the same classroom, I presented a workshop on reversals. And in that workshop were Mary Greer and Rachel Pollack. And I can tell you, I did feel a little silly presenting reversals to Mary and Rachel. Now, they were very gracious about it. And in fact, Wald stopped me after and said, I bet you had some ideas that even Mary had never thought of. So that made me feel good.
Yeah.
But still, I'm sure that Mary and Rachel didn't need to hear my take on reversals. And there might have been something else they perhaps would have rather heard. Now, the other side of it, though, as an attendee, having to choose between different classes is in a way a wonderful thing, like having to choose at the buffet. But like the buffet, you're not going to be able to eat everything.
Well, that's a good point. That happens with the evening classes, so you want to take, and these are, kind of they offer the venue. We're already here, so people who have something a little different
Mm-hmm.
will actually present the evening class. And you're like, if you take one, then you've just, cut yourself out of the chance of taking all the other ones.
Right. Right.
But, I think something struck me when you were just talking about that whole thing. I think it's a good idea for even people who really are super tarot people to get the perspective from the other people. That
True.
really just relates back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago with the beginners,
It's true. And, and I think that's another thing. And I think this is true, whether we're talking about the big national or international events or even our local events, that there is something wonderful, not only about how new students learn from experienced readers, but how experienced readers learn from new students.
Right.
And it was actually from Wald himself that I got the idea that you didn't always have to have a class with people of the same level of experience.
Yes.
Prior to meeting him, that was always the way I did it. My beginning class was my beginning class, my intermediate class was my intermediate class, and so on. And it was from him I got the idea that we really do learn from each other at different levels. So it's true. You're absolutely right. So let me ask you, one thing I've known about you is that you're also very sort of on top of the online tarot world. You hang out in eclectic, you do all of that. So you're pretty entrenched in tarot community online, on the national and international level, in real life, because you go to Reader's Studio, and also locally in South Florida, where you're a creator of community as well as a participator in community. What would you say to someone who was interested in building local community? What are your experiences in local tarot community, and how does that work?
Well, I got to say, I would take a page right out of your book, Christiana. And you just created community by constantly coming up with events for people to be attracted to that have to do with tarot. I think how I met you, I hadn't even met you, and I showed up when you did your holiday bazaar,
That was how we met. I found you online. It might have even been the Reader's Studio Ning where I found you first. But I remember I found you online somehow and asked you to come read for free at a holiday event. Isn't that how we met and became friends?
No, you didn't even have to ask me. I just said, that's good. I'm going to do that. So I want you to know how well that works. You created an event. You're a real good marketer. You put all the vibes out there, let people know this is going on. And got people who you knew you had certainly plenty of readers there that you already knew their skill and experience, but I just showed up with my tarot deck.
And thank goodness you did, because we've been friends ever since.
Yeah, I agree. But that's, you do that, you do a lot of things online, but you would do a lot of the different things all around Palm Beach County and beyond that people would be attracted to coming to. If I weren't so mired in all the different things I have going on right now, I would try to make that happen still, since you've gone over to the other coast.
I have gone to the west side of Florida. I have.
Yeah.
But I think about it too, now that I'm on the west side of Florida and I'm kind of making friends with the people in Orlando and the people here in Tampa, and I'm thinking, there are so many fabulous tarot people and the people we get along with, the drummers, the belly dancers, all of those people. They're not just in South Florida, they're everywhere. So, of course, in my head, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we have to do like a Florida event.
Yes.
That's what we have to do. But, and that was probably at the end of the day what made me want to have this conversation was, what works, what doesn't, what do we like, what do we don't like, how does that all go? But the thing that I think about when I think about having a big local event is the money piece.
Right.
That, probably my favorite international tarot event that I ever went to was Watts, which was wonderful. That was Julie Watts and Corinne Kenner in Wisconsin. Great event, lost money.
Okay.
And I don't mind running a break-even event, but no one can afford to lose money.
That's right.
And then on the other side, I speak with people about Reader Studio, and by comparison, Reader Studio isn't cheap. When you get into New York and staying in the hotel and all of that, it's an investment, worthy investment, but an investment. Some of the other events that I've been part of have been less expensive, but also didn't continue.
Right.
Didn't happen every year because they weren't financial successes.
Yeah.
So I think there's a real question in how do we build a community that is sustainable financially? And then we look at local community. There was a time when you were involved in two very active local tarot communities, the South Florida Tarot Association and West Palm Beach Tarot Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And, so we had a lot of stuff going on, and there's not as much of that going on in that area right now. I think primarily because Garnet got a promotion and I moved away.
Yes, because you guys were the Queens of Wands. So, and in the meantime, into that, vacuum that no one has entered in, there's definitely an opportunity there.
There is. But this is the question that I grapple with, and maybe you have some insight on it. Is it that in order to have an event or a local organization, do you need that Queen of Wands personality? Is it are Wald and Ruth Ann also the Queen of Wands? What does it take to be that, does it take a personality like a Thalassa, or could it be a committee of people that would form that energy?
I thought about that more than once since the dissolution of the South Florida Tarot Association, because I knew there was a need for that to be that it's administration, it's work.
It is.
I know, I'm preaching to the choir, So if you could get several people interested, maybe you can share it. I don't know. But it does take at least some commitment of time and somebody who has an interest in it,
know. And I would say it's the commitment, it's the interest, and it has to be the kind of person who doesn't mind making phone calls, sending email, creating events on Facebook, and saying, come on, this will be fun. You got to come.
Right.
You have to have that personality.
Yes.
And I think, one of the sort of weird things is a lot of tarotists that I know are actually shy.
Yes. It's an introvert. When you compare it to the personality test, I forget the name of it right now, but there's initials like mine is ENFJ.
Myers-Briggs, yep.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs, thank you. And so many of them are introverts. So
it's true. It's true, and then that comes up as an issue for marketing. I know a lot of great tarot readers who crash and burn because they can't market.
Right.
And it's kind of the same issue. So when we talk about starting something local, a local tarot thing, whether it's an event, a tarot picnic, a tarot dance, a tarot class, what would you say to someone who feels the need for that in their community, thinks there would be interest, and wants to know what to do? What other than taking a page from my notebook? You've got your classes going on, you've got all kind of stuff going on. What would you say?
Well, like anything else, you have to begin with the end in mind. So you've got to see it the way you want it, and then look at the components. What do I need to do? Do I need people? Do I need a place? What is my objective? that was one of the main things that I learned as a training facilitator, is that all the training that I did had to have a primary objective.
Right.
And everything else is in support of that. So if your objective is to expose more people to tarot, let's say, just general peoples, then your consideration for a venue might be in a place where, more of the general population might show up and not just us new age folks, that sort of thing. So have an objective. If it's just to have fun, or if it's just to, give an opportunity for psychics and readers to be able to have a moment, that they can earn some revenue for their very, well-honed and hard-earned gifts, then that can be it too. But everything that you do in support of that needs to be focused on that. Get your 8 of Wands all lined up.
That's perfect. I love that. I love that. So if we could, if the world could be how you would want it, what would you want to see in terms of tarot fellowship and educational opportunities? Would you like to see more kinds of events on a local level, on a national level? Do you think there's a need for that? Do you think there's not a need for that? What would you like to see?
Well, actually, I would like to see kind of a bigger event for the state, like a state tarot convention for Florida, for example.
You think?
Yeah.
I so would too. I so would.
And I would like to see those kind of things going on all around, where you don't have to necessarily spend well worth it, but spend the money that, to go to New York and stay in the hotel, where you can get there overnight, or maybe only one day. It's not so difficult to travel there. Orlando for us is
it's the no-brainer. Orlando's the no-brainer.
Yeah, it's in the middle for everyone, and it's set up and ready to rock and roll for any kind of convention. So I think that the more that people can get together in a fairly local, I think everyone should go to national and international at least once or more times if they enjoy it.
Absolutely.
There are people that go every year, and they're not even professionals. They just dig it,
That's right.
But for those of us who, for whatever reason, just love tarot, whether we're professionals or we're passionate about it as a hobby, or we just like to get readings from the best people, and we like to be at these events because that's where they all are.
Right.
I think a statewide convention, certainly for a state like Florida, at times in my life I've pondered, what it would be like to live, I'm from Missouri originally, and, let's say if I just magically decided to go back there, it would not be very tarot friendly.
No, it wouldn't. No.
But Florida is.
Florida is, absolutely. And in fact, last week we had a tarot reader from Orlando. From Orlando, Olivia Destratus was with us last week on Psychic Cafe.
Right.
And she and I were talking about, a similar thing, that there really are a lot of us here in Florida. Florida's in the South, but it is tarot friendly. This is a tarot friendly state. So if you like really good weather and really good people and tarot, come to Florida. And, let's sort of put out the intention that we're going to, gather the right people here in Florida to make something happen and show the world what we're doing with Florida tarot.
Awesome. I'm on board.
Excellent. I thought you might be.
I may not be the queen of wands, but I carry a wand every now and then, and
Yes.
I know how to use it.
I know you do. Well, Mary Ellen Collins, I want to thank you so much for being on the Psychic Cafe. Let people know how to reach you. Of course, you're available for tarot readings, and give us your shameless plug.
Okay. Well, at this point in time, I can Skype, so you can reach me at 561-315-5387. I'm also available. Just shoot me an email, marycollins0128 @comcast.net. I swear to God, I'm working on that website. It's it always gets just a tiny bit too tech for me, but I will be making myself a little more available there as well. So
perfect. And of course, you're available on Facebook, and we can find you there as well.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to spend some time with us and for being part of tarot community on every level, online, in person, local, regional, national, international. You're one of the bright shining stars, and it's just so great to know you.
Well, thank you, Christiana. And I just want to say a quick little plug. My thanks to Wald and Ruth Ann Amberstone, who produce Reader's Studio. I love it. Absolutely. And would recommend anybody on the East Coast or anywhere in the world to go there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary Ellen. We'll see you again.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.